graduated in June of '66, and they gave me deferment, so I went ahead and actually went on active duty in, I think, January of '67, and then I retired in 1988. And I went to Williams Air Force Base for pilot training, and from there I went to Eglin Air Force Base to check out the C-123, and then from there to Vietnam. Spent a year in Vietnam at Phan Rang. Well, I flew C-123s in Vietnam. It's a twin-engine cargo. It had 2 reciprocating engines and 2 jet engines. And we would go ahead and fly into 2,000-foot strips. It's a 60,000-pound airplane. We'd carry cargo, carry troops, carried cows on the hoof. Just anything you can put in the airplane, we carried it. And we'd go to these small fields. Always had to call the Army first to see if they owned the airfield still, or the Viet Cong owned it that day. And if they owned it, we'd go and land and offload our stuff. One of my flights, we carried some indigenous Vietnamese troops, and when they got off, one of them left a little grenade. We had rollers on our floor, so you could roll the pallets in and out. And one of them put a grenade under the roller, pulled a pin on it. So when we got airborne, my loadmaster said, "Sir, we have a live grenade back here." So we made an immediate turn and ran. You know, I made a pretty good landing that day. Didn't want to jar it loose. And EOD came out and disarmed it. Well, like they say, it's hours and hours of boredom, interrupted by minutes of stark terror whenever something goes wrong. And we had a mission in KC-135s, and whenever you're refueling a B-52, any airplane, you're only about 15 feet away because the boom is not very long in extension. So the fighters are pretty agile, but the bombers aren't that agile. And so this one bomber came in a little bit too fast, and he hit my boom and crushed it. So that's my midair, that I've had. I survived it though, and so not everybody survives their midairs with the B-52. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Well, when we were flying 123s, we generally flew 5,000, 8,000 feet, something like that. It was an unpressurized airplane, so we fly the windows open because it was hot. When it rained, we got wet because it rained in. It was a beautiful country. The waterfalls and mountains, really high mountains and everything. Coastline, really pretty coastline. Now it's, resort areas. They weren't then. And so that was in Vietnam. In KC-135s, we flew out of Thailand. When you're at 35,000 feet, you can't really tell the terrain differences that much. I mean, you can see it, but you can't feel it. And there's no smells like there is when you're down 5,000 feet. When you're flying over the Pacific, it's just all water. And we flew one time from Guam to oh man, I can't remember the name of it right now. No, a little bitty island. It was like 3 miles wide, in the middle of nowhere. Fortunately, I had a good navigator because we didn't have GPS back then. All we had was a sextant, the sun, and stars, and hopefully a good navigator to keep us straight. When we were flying up to Alaska or flying to up northern Canada, it was all tundra, so it was all just snow, all white. It's just we've got a beautiful country and a beautiful planet. We really do, and so you get to enjoy all that. So, and flying at night was really neat. I mean, I didn't. The restriction, the cockpit was restricted visibility-wise, but looking outside and seeing the lights, down 30,000 feet below, and you can make out the streets. And I flew over my hometown in Russellville, Arkansas, a time or two, and I could see. I knew my way around, and it was really kind of neat. And of course, you fly into places like, after I retired, I flew into Belgrade, and it was East Bloc country at the time. They didn't have any lights until you got right to the runway, to the airport. So I mean, it's a stark difference. It really is.
Think of anything else you want to share with us we didn't hit?
Well, I flew one mission. We'd fly from Kadena Air Base in Japan, and in the KC-135, we'd get a pickup, an SR-71 film canister that they had just taken over North Vietnam. We'd fly it to Eielson Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska, where another 135 would meet us. They'd fly it to DC, and we'd go back to Kadena. Well, that was about a 30-hour mission for us, because I tell you, the Aleutian chain is really long when you're flying it. I don't know, the thing that really disturbed me was the way the media covered it. I mean, they just made it sound really bad. I mean, made it sound like we were the villains, and we weren't. We were over there doing a job and trying to save South Vietnam for their freedom. And it's a real shame that people weren't treated a little bit better when they came back from Vietnam. I didn't experience the worst parts, but I've had friends that they were spit on. They were, really mean-spirited things when they got back in country. And that's a shame. And I know people have really tried hard to make up for that nowadays. They really do. And I mean, we appreciate that. I appreciate it. But you can't make it up. It is what it is, and we did what we lived through it, and it's just, it's always there. Well, I can tell you that one of my table mates, was killed in Vietnam. Flew F-100s. He got killed. 5% of my graduating class from VMI was killed in Vietnam. 2 of my classmates were blinded in Vietnam. I mean, war is not fun and it's not pretty, but it's necessary if you want to be free. You got to make those sacrifices and make some of those decisions. So it's tough.